Hi everybody and welcome to the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof. Today on the show we're talking about, and I guess two people that might be sitting on the sidelines of live streaming. They might have an interest but they haven't quite brought themselves to go live. And we're going to talk about the fear, we're going to talk about the gear, we're going to talk about some entry level goals just to kick you off and get you started. And I think, I'm as guilty of this as anybody. A part of me wants to be really prepared before I do anything. And that's great up until a point. But the reality is I can spend the rest of my time researching and never get started. And I think, honestly, the best thing you can do is get started, because through the doing, you'll get the feedback that you need. So that's what we're talking about today. We are going out live to all the various places, so let us know where you're watching from. And if you are watching live, you can do that lovely hashtag thing that I talk about every single week, hashtag Team Live, or if you're watching this later on, hashtag Team Replay. And hello to Insomnia Doodles. Hello, Sam. Welcome. How's your week been?
Good. My in-laws are in town and they immediately went and got themselves sick. So they're like shuffling around the house. I think they're on the mend, but it's been a week of like, how close do I want to get to the but beyond that, yeah, it's been a pretty holiday-esque week. I've like toned down on like the freelance work and the gig work, which might not be for the best, but it's relaxing. And also, I was on a podcast. I was interviewed by Story of My Pet, which is a cool cat-centric or pet-centric podcast that beats us out on the Good Pods rankings every time. But no, it's hosted by Julie, and she does a fantastic job. I'll drop the link in the chat, and there it is on screen as well. I made a short link so you don't have to find the very extended one, but we talk about all things Cute Avalanche, how we got started, and the sort of time we almost didn't continue fostering, which happened very early on. It was a pretty insane story. So give it a listen, and give Julia a follow at Story of My Pet. And yeah, I think that's all I've got going on this week. How's things with you, John?
Things are going pretty well. Obviously, we're winding down for the year over here, and I must admit, I kind of knew I was tired, but I don't think I realized how tired I was until I stopped doing a lot of things, and I was just like crashed up in bed watching TikToks. So I'm definitely hoping to have a very low-key Christmas this year and just chill out and relax. So I we'll do what we can. But and again, I mentioned this in my Learn Live Streaming newsletter, but I really want to encourage people to take whatever time they need at this time of year to look after themselves. I know there are a lot of expectations, a lot of obligations and social things, and especially for me as a bit of an introvert, I enjoy people, but in very small doses. So do whatever you need to be okay. Insomnia Doodles mentioned something in the chat I don't want to talk about too much, but please know I understand and I see you on that one, especially. And a big hello to Saeed, who's watching on YouTube and commenting on LinkedIn. I must admit, I'm really guilty of doing that too, because sometimes I will watch on one platform and I'll comment on another. If I'm watching on YouTube, I can send it off to my TV and fun things like that. So that's really, really fun. Crashed in bed watching TikToks is such a relatable mood. It is, yes, it really is. But let's get to today's topic. And again, Insomnia Doodles mentioned the whole stream title makes me feel equally seen and attacked. And we apologize for that. And we're also not sorry. So a bit of column A, a bit of column B. So let's get into it, Sam. So today we are talking about, if we are sitting on the sidelines, and I bring this up because I'm in a lot of different communities where people often show up every week to watch the live stream. They comment, they respond to articles and things, but I haven't actually seen them go live ever.
Sure.
And I kind of want to unpack that because I think obviously, this is the video and live streaming show. We want you to go live or create videos. That's kind of the whole point. But I realize there are a lot of people that are sort of sitting on the sidelines. They probably don't feel ready. It's probably in part emotional. It's probably, we talk about the fear in the gear and potentially being overwhelmed by the options. But I guess, what would you tell? And I know you've been doing this for a really long time, but if you could go back in time and tell yourself as you were beginning to maybe offer some encouragement, set some expectations, what kind of things would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I personally am one of those people that gets caught up in the journey to get to there. So like I will be like, what would be fun is I would like to build a show that's centered around X, Y, and Z, like a Dungeons and Dragons stream. And I will spend days and weeks creating the perfect OBS scene collection with all the overlays and stuff, and then that show never happens. Like we'll spend all that time doing it. So don't do that. If it comes to you and you're like, you know what? I think I want to do this, just draw a line in the sand and be like, step over and pick a platform, pick a software and start and go and learn from your failures, because it's not win or fail, it's win or learn, right? Everything that you do wrong is just something that you can improve later. Nobody expects you to come out and be doing a stream that should be like, on Netflix tomorrow, right? That's not a thing. I mean, maybe it is, but it's not a goal people strive for, is like, I want to do live streaming so I can be, running my mouth off on the streaming platforms like Netflix. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about going on to YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or Twitch and like just getting your thing out there. So just start, right? And look back and, take it all in. Definitely watch your streams after you've done it so you can learn more.
Absolutely. And I feel like in so many doodles, we almost need an entire segment on the show called Introvert's Corner.
Oh, yeah.
Where we just talk about how some days we don't want to play with other people, but I totally get that. So she writes, I go through phases where I want to stream all of the time, followed by periods where I would be perfectly happy not to encounter another human being for several days. I totally appreciate that, and I get that as well.
Like, I'm actively in that phase. Like, I'm a person who always wants to stream, but these past few weeks, I'm like, I do, but also I don't. And if it wasn't for these Friday streams, I wouldn't at all. I'd just be like, it's the beauty of like having something scheduled is that you force yourself to do that. So I think from whatever else I just said seconds ago, add on to that, pick a platform, pick a software, pick a day of the week and be like, I am doing this for the next 6 months.
Absolutely. And hello to Ender Trading, who's joining us over on YouTube. And Insomnia Doodles writes, Introvert's Corner sounds great until it gets too popular.
Don't get meta here.
I love it. Saeed's actually got a really great point, which we'll bring up in a moment when we get to that part of this segment. But
it's definitely
I guess the first thing to really realize and just appreciate and just put out there is most of us aren't going to feel particularly comfortable doing this. Very few people are just born with this innate, even if they're outgoing, even if they're extroverted, it's not a particularly normal thing to turn on a camera and look into it and just talk. It can certainly be helpful to have a co-host or a guest. That can be useful too, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. But at some point, you've got to just accept the fact that there is a learning curve with this. And, we talk about there being a lot of different hats that you potentially wear as a live stream producer.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't really want to dwell on that this week. We really want to set some very simple goals. We want you to be able to turn on a camera, talk into a microphone, respond to some chat. Like that's, let's keep our goals really simple. We don't want to project too far in the future. We don't want to think about how many likes or subscribers or followers or anything like that at this point in time. We really just want to get you a little bit more comfortable and confident on camera. And as much as people would love to hear about a silver bullet for this, there really is no substitute for just going live and practicing. And trust me, you will get more comfortable with this over time, but it won't happen out of the gate. And I think in a lot of ways, the thing that I'm trying to encourage, especially beginners to do, is just to be okay with the stumbles and the things that do go wrong and continue. I was I have a friend in sort of audio podcasting, and he's done live streams many years ago, and he's just returning to it now. And he's like, he's not really a beginner. Like, he communicates all the time with everybody, but he was certainly new to working with Streamlabs desktop. And there were some audio issues, and we did need to go through that together and sort that out. And it's weird, and I was telling Sam about this before we came online, but I actually found that a little bit triggering, because
Yeah.
I remembered when I first started and I cared so much and I tried so hard, and some weeks it was just a disaster and there was nothing I could really do about it except pick myself up and try again and go again. And I'll sort of give you a more concrete example of that in a second, but I guess some of the things I'd like to tell you that I think are reassuring, and feel free to jump in anytime, Sam, but
Right.
you don't need to go live to the entire world. You can choose
True.
where your destination is, and in some cases you can go live privately to a small group. You can actually go live to nobody at all and just practice and record and just have that for your reference. But
Yeah,
even if you
I
do
think
choose to go live,
I was going to say, I know in a lot of past shows, we've talked a lot about multicasting. And at this point, if you have not started streaming, don't. Like, don't multicast. Pick one platform. Focus down on one thing and start until you've got your feet wet and you're more confident about it. And then you come back and check out those old episodes.
and I think that's good advice generally. Like, I know there are some people in this world that are really deeply inspired about big, audacious goals. But for me, I find that really overwhelming. So what I do instead is I set sort of a minimum standard. What am I going to do each week?
Yeah.
And once I've got that down to a bit of an art and science, I think, okay, I've got a little bit more capability to grow and try something different and add to my plate. Then I can think about adding extra things. But again, we're really focusing on like how to just get started. The other thing too is like nothing is necessarily permanent online. I know people have a lot of fears about that, but the reality is if you go live on YouTube, you don't have great feelings about that recording. You can make it private. You can delete it. There won't be a lot of people joining you when you start out. You won't have a built-in audience.
Yeah.
And this is actually a feature, not a bug. It helps you to get out the mistakes without too many people noticing them. And I feel like we've got a lot going on in the chat. So let me just check in with that. And let's go to Saeed's comment, which is a great one. I find that having a co-host or support is great. That way you have a real dialogue and not just creepily talking to your monitor.
Right, definitely.
And I think that's...
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'll take this one step further in a second, but yeah, like the fact that John is part of this stream and I am part of his stream keeps us going week to week. We can't, be like, I'm just not feeling it this week. No, somebody else is counting on us. We have accountability with each other so that we keep this show going and we keep doing it every time and as good as we can. And when you're first getting started, if you're not a performer, which I'm assuming most people are not, this thing where you're talking to a camera and all you get back is nothing, maybe you get some chat, maybe you don't. It's real awkward. So having somebody else on camera to have a conversation with is fantastic to keep you going. That being said, if you don't have that person on camera with you, that is the thing you're going to be practicing when you start streaming is, how do I not shut up? Like if you're someone who is very quiet all the time and you really want to do this, you're going to have to learn to talk a lot. Now, the second thing I wanted to say that this came to mind was having an on-screen person to help you keep the conversation going is great, but also having someone you can count on in chat is just as good. Call, your best friend or even your mom and be like, listen, I'm going to be doing this thing every Friday. Please come in and chat as much as possible so that you have things to react to.
And like, honestly, even just having somebody in the chat to let you know if things are working or they're not working, because I was going to wait a little bit later till I tell you the story. But when I started streaming, I had my 30-minute show. I do once a week, every week. I spent the entire week preparing for this show. I had slides, I had videos, I had overlays. Everything was planned in so much detail. I'd written articles. I was so ready for this stream. I went live. I didn't really have many people joining me because I was quite new. Nobody really knew who the hell I was. And I sort of, at some point after I finished the live, I went back and watched it, and I'd been muted the entire time.
Yep.
And from a technical perspective, that's annoying. But from an emotional perspective, as someone who was a new creator, like, I just wanted to throw myself off a ledge. It was so demoralizing. And I'm the kind of person that could just feel bad about that for the rest of time. And I don't know
Sure.
what it was about that particular day where I just went, you're being stupid, pick yourself up, schedule this again for another 30 minutes later. We did it second time. I actually had people show up live for the second time, which is something I didn't for the first one. It was much better. I was really well rehearsed and ready to go. And in some ways, especially for beginners, but probably for all of us, there is something to be said about being okay with the results and keeping going. And I guess that's the other thing that Kaz Thompson, who's watching over on LinkedIn, says, I love the concept that Sam said, having a show scheduled. I'm not afraid to go live, but like you said, having it consistently on the calendar would give me more structure.
Yeah.
And I, even in that first live stream show where nobody was turning up, I told myself every time I go live, I'm building a presentation muscle. I'm getting that practice in. I'm getting better. And that's the premise of my entire podcast, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But there's two parts to that. You know, your audience comes to expect you and builds you into their routine, even if it happens to be like, I don't know, 1 a.m. in Germany. Some people will join you at that time, which is really awesome. But the other thing too is you're getting better. And I think for content creators generally, it's important to realize you're not going to live or die by the success or lack thereof of the last thing you created, but you are kind of building a library, and you're developing your own skills. I feel like I might have gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, but
okay.
Again, I'll just check in with the chat once more. And so many doodles writes, oh, also fun to point out, my mic was muted for the first 10 minutes or so until somebody kindly informed me of this. So yes, we've all been there.
Yep.
And
That one will be there again. It's not something that magically stops happening to you. You continue to make that mistake at least once a decade or once a year. Yeah, it's funny because, like, I think a lot of what we want to say today is, you know, keep everything on the easiest possible way you can do it at this time until you've really got a routine and found the need to get things more complicated. But when you do start getting more complicated, you start incurring more of those dumb issues, like, you know, unmuting the mic, or, you know, you want to go and do something fancy like multicast to Instagram as well as doing all these things, but you forget to actually hit the start streaming part of Instagram because that's the second step. Anyway, keeping it simple.
And you know, not to criticize Sam on our live show or anything, but he does like to go out to a million different platforms, whereas I only go out to two. And in some ways, especially for a beginner, once you've turned on your camera and you've got your mic going, you really want to be conscious and present in the show, in the moment that you're having, and you checking in with your guests. So, I mean, that's all incredibly useful stuff to keep in mind. Again, I'm just checking with the chat as we go. So Saeed's saying, for my first LinkedIn Live just a few weeks ago, I just scheduled it, shared it, and then started to work on it. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Saeed is one of my favorite people on LinkedIn. I see a lot of him. He does a lot of funny animated GIFs that feature him, but I actually don't hear his voice very often.
Right.
But I did listen to a podcast during the week where he was interviewed, so that was really cool.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
All right. So, you know, and I feel like there are a number of people in the chat that are definitely identifying with a lot of the things that we're talking about, who may not necessarily be complete beginners. But again, I think life happens. Things will go wrong. There will be things
Yes.
outside of your control. And I think the meta skill in some ways is just learning to be okay and learning to be adaptive. And as much as I love live streaming, if I really want something to be perfect, quote unquote perfect, I will record offline and I will edit and I will slice things together.
Yeah.
Because the thing about live is you're interacting with your audience, and that's the really beautiful, powerful thing about that. Um, okay, cool. So, let's go into the next segment. I'm distracted by a few things. That's the other thing. Anytime you're live, there will be a shiny object and you'll look at it and you'll be like, what am I even talking about? So we'll go in, we'll come back in just a moment and we'll talk about the gear a little bit.
And then I looked at the first assessment, and the first assessment was record a 5-minute video. And it was a pretty simple introduction of yourself. There was nothing exciting. I didn't have to research. It was just a 5-minute warm up. And I freaked out. That course is still sitting in the cupboard beside me. I see that stack of papers and I almost rock in the corner. It cost me a lot of money to sign up, and I threw the whole course away.
And that's Michelle J. Raymond talking on my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, which you can learn more about over at johnlacey.com. I realize I use her as an example a lot because her transformation has been insane. She speaks on the podcast about how she was sort of terrified to be in front of a camera just to introduce herself on a online course. And next year, she is speaking at Social Media Marketing World in San Diego.
That's awesome.
If you're not aware, that's a big deal. That's a huge platform and audience. So I'm really inspired by her journey, and I like to share it with a lot of people because we all start at the same place. We're all going to be nervous. We're all not going to feel confident. Like it's just something we need to sort of push through. Okay, this is the video on live streaming show, and I pressed the wrong button, so that's the joy of live.
See?
But anyway, it just goes to show that it's all on the cards, and there are so many buttons to press inside of the software. It's always fun. But today we're talking all about overcoming the procrastination, dealing with the fear, and really just taking the first steps to go live, wherever that is, whatever that looks like for you. And I think a lot of it is about overcoming the fear of being on camera, and that is certainly something that you can work on and develop. But let's talk about the gear as well, Sam, because it can be really tempting to think, okay, I can't get started until I have a particular piece of equipment or until I can afford a studio. Or what would your advice be to the person that might be doing that?
I'm going to read this from Saeed really quick, who says, without a Rodecaster Pro, 3 Elgato lights, 2 Stream Decks, and a Shure mic, is this a Christmas song? And a partridge in a pear tree. You cannot start going live. Just kidding. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, don't set your sights on all of that equipment. Everything you need, you already have, most likely. This is all you need. One little phone with a camera and a mic built into it. That'll get you going. You can go live to most platforms through a mobile app right now. If you have a PC or a laptop and a webcam, you're done already, right? You're good. Like, don't worry about dropping $1,000 on a camera and building out a studio and getting green screen and all of that stuff and buying overlays. And you don't need any of it. You can just start one camera, one mic, and go. And chances are you have a phone and it's built into it.
Absolutely. And I guess the thing that I kind of encourage people to do is, establish, as much as we talk about how much we love it, it's probably not for everybody. Like, live streaming is not for everybody. And you kind of want to find that out before you've spent any kind of serious money on gear and equipment. There's nothing worse than sort of installing the $10,000 home studio to discover you never want to do this ever again in your life. So
I've seen those listings on the Facebook Marketplace of like, my son bought this PC for streaming and doesn't want to do it anymore. I'm like, oh my God, that's like $5,000 PC. Like, yeah,
absolutely.
So, figure it out before you put the investment in.
And I think in some ways we're kind of spoiled these days. There are a lot of options, a lot of tools. They're all pretty good. Again, I know it can be another trap to really obsess about the production quality. But again, if you're just starting out, you don't need to worry about that too much. Just get comfortable being on camera, talking about things. Some weeks I feel like a bit of an audio snob, but I'm always surprised at what I will put up with if I'm interested in you or what you're talking about. So I kind of want to encourage people to not even, don't lose any sleep about that at all, because I don't think it really matters in the scheme of things. If people
No.
can basically see you, if they can basically hear you, then that's all good. That said, let's talk about some budget options if you do
Sure.
want to, once you've done it a little while, you're not necessarily ready to run out and get that Rodecaster Pro, but you do want to up the production quality a little bit. I guess the place we should start is just lighting. So if you are streaming during the day, if you're near a large window, it's often a good idea to have that in front of you, so it fills in, your face with natural light, which is really, really awesome. Tech Troublemaker is saying, "I will stop procrastinating tomorrow, maybe." It's funny because I sent out some messages before we went live, and everybody's got a funny take on the title. I love it. And Sam's point is great. Saeed's just saying looking on eBay for streaming quitters gear is a great thing. And again, as we move into the new year, there'll be a lot of people that are really optimistic about a lot of things. And, that's fine. That's good. But again, don't run before you can walk.
Yeah, it's fair. In February, there's going to be some really great stuff on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. Look for that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, as John was saying, if you have access to just natural light, that's all you need, and that's some of the best light. Like, it's better than most cheap studio lights, at least. So yeah, if you can consistently count on daylight, set your stream up for that. And next best thing to that, you only have to put about $100 down to get a box kit for some lights and stands and some soft boxes, which honestly might be too much to do early on unless you're already doing other things, like you're a photographer or you're definitely going to do YouTube videos. But like that, I think is the big step up. Like somewhere in the middle, you can get just a bunch of LED daylight bulbs and just grab whatever light stands you have around your house and try and make that work. If you want to get super DIY with it, I've done this in the past where you go down to Home Depot and get some clip lights, which are cheap. They're super cheap. They're like $5. And put a bulb in that, and then you get the bag from a cereal box, and you just tape it around that clip light, and that will diffuse that light, and it'll look pretty good. It's almost as good as that $100 soft box. It's ridiculous.
There are always opportunities to MacGyver that stuff. I love it. I guess the other thing, and I actually own one of these, but I can never work out where I keep it. So otherwise I would physically show you. If you are just working with your phone, you can buy these, these ring lights that you just attach to your phone. You press a button. You get a little bit extra light. Sam's probably going to show you one here. They're really cheap. They do make a little bit of difference. So, if you want to play with those, that's really awesome. I'm really kind of distracted by all the wonderful puns that are in the chat right now. Tech Troublemaker writes, I put the pro in procrastinate. Saeed's saying podcastinate, don't procrastinate.
Yep. And
Insomnia Doodles, and it's I'm fascinated, and I have seen her set up, and it's wonderful. But she says, or you could be super lazy like me and become a virtual avatar, and that in itself is really interesting. And we kind of need to get her on the show to talk about that, because it's really intriguing.
And that's actually becoming way easier to do these days as well.
Absolutely. Tech Troublemaker said, I used a lamp with 3 lights on it, and I moved them around when I first started.
Yeah.
And I think we've spoken about this on the show previously, but when I first started with my Logitech C920 camera, I literally just had an LED lamp with a posable neck. I would just put it in front of my face. And it's amazing how much better the visuals were because of that. The downside of that was it's not a particularly diffused light. It was pretty painful, like it's staring into the sun after an hour of meetings. But again, whatever
Cereal bag.
works is perfectly okay.
Just throw that cereal bag over it, diffuses it perfectly. It's amazing. It's so good. And if you really want to step it up, you can run down to, I know this is going to sound expensive, run down to your dollar store and grab a giant piece of poster board, white poster board, and you're just going to put that almost opposite your light so it bounces back. Get a little reflective light there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm sure there's a million videos on YouTube about how to like DIY a light setup for under $100. Check that out.
Absolutely. Although sometimes I look at the links people go to and I think I could just pay somebody some money. Like I'm not a handy type of person, but you know, it's always an option. Okay,
the people out there building like cranes out of PVC piping, I'm like, that's too much DIY. Like I can tape a bag to a clip light. I'm good.
Absolutely. All right, so this is the video and live streaming show. We're talking all about overcoming procrastination to go live and to deal with some of those fears and the gear. And we're going to talk about how we can stream from our mobile phone and also our desktop coming up in just a moment.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them. Mm-hmm. So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. Well, he loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I'd talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And as Sam says, if you don't have enough cats in your life, you can check out his podcast, Just Kidding Around, which you can learn more about over at cuteavalanche.com. So this is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about overcoming the procrastination, dealing with the fear and the gear, and just getting started simply and, not reinventing the wheel, but just setting some basic goals, because I'm sure there are people out there whose goal it was to go live, and even as we reach the end of December, may not have actually pressed that button yet. And we just want to encourage you to, just push a little further, set some expectations for yourself. Don't think you're going to, do that Hollywood production that Sam alluded to earlier, but just get comfortable with turning on the camera, talking into the microphone, and communicating with the whoever's in the chat. And again, keep in mind that when you start, that probably won't be a lot of people, but if you can bring in some friends, if you can reach out to people, that's always incredibly helpful. So Sam, you did mention earlier that we can stream directly from our phone, and most people have a smartphone these days. So I'm going to talk about Instagram specifically because I think it's a good example, but just generally speaking, what do you think is worth knowing about streaming from a phone for a beginner?
Yeah, so first off, every major platform, almost every major platform, you can do this. So Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, as John said, TikTok, I'm sure people know you can stream to all of those from your mobile phone, and it's super easy to set up. It just takes like 1 or 2 clicks, and on your phone, you enter title, and there you are, you're live, you're holding it, you're ready to go. I would advise that you definitely have a tripod ready of some sort, even if it's a mini one or just a phone holder or whatever, so it's a little more stable, because nothing's going to turn me off of a stream more than like you're just spinning around constantly or like just all over the place. Be aware, because phone cameras vary a lot. They're not nearly as good as a DSLR, or, you're moving around and the light is constantly changing and the phones can't compensate with that enough. So be aware of that and try and find a well-lit area and not move away from it if possible. And, try and pay attention to what background noise you have. You don't want to be in an area where somebody's playing music, because then you might run the risk of getting a copyright strike or infringement and things like that. And if possible, grab a $20 wireless lav mic from Amazon, just to A, it'll help cut out some of that background noise, and B, it'll just up your audio game on your device. And yeah, I think that's the basics there.
Sure. And last week on the show, we did actually talk at some length about Instagram Live Producer, which is the ability to stream from traditional tools. But for today's conversation, we really would just want to focus on the mobile side, because I think in a lot of ways, going live on Instagram is probably one of the easier platforms to work with just from a phone. So I've got some overlays, and it's funny, we talk about lighting and stuff. You're going to see me in natural daylight and I look atrocious, but I'm going to take one for the team and show you anyway in the effort to prove, share some knowledge, hopefully. So if you are on the Instagram app, you can actually go and choose to go live. We have a whole bunch of settings on the left-hand side. I say the left-hand side, you can actually change which side of the screen these appear on in the settings, but certainly on my screen, they're on the left-hand side. So we can set a broadcast title, and again, we just click on that icon and it'll give us the ability to write something in there. This is a particularly unique feature to Instagram, but they have this thing called This or That, and it gives you the ability to basically put two things up against each other and encourage people to share their views on that. So it could be Restream versus StreamYard, or I don't know, potatoes versus rice and other things that, I can't eat because I have stupid dietary risk constraints. But, that's a whole other show. There is the ability to nominate a charity to support too, which is quite unusual and is pretty much an Instagram thing. But the things I want to talk about here are the audience and the schedule. So you can schedule an event, a live session on Instagram from your phone in a way that you can't from desktop at the moment. Hopefully that'll come sometime in the future. But the audience feature is really, really handy because you can go public or you can practice. And again, if you're new to this, if you're not feeling terribly confident, by all means, go in and practice with the practice feature. Turn it on. If you can, I think those points Sam made about having a tripod, having it steady, not being in a busy area are all wonderful things to consider. But you can click that button and you can be good to go. The only thing I would sort of add to that is if you go into the settings, and we spoke about this last week, but this is great for everybody. If you go into the settings and privacy, go to archiving and download, and you have this option which is save live to archive. So whether you go live to the world or whether you're in that practice mode, it'll save it within your Instagram account. And you can download it from your phone app. Instagram is a weird platform in the sense that there are very particular things you can do on desktop and things you can do on mobile, and they don't always overlap. So certainly keep that in mind. But it really is one of the easiest ways to go live from your phone. And I know some people are interested in Instagram as a platform, but even if you're not, I think it's a great practice option.
Yeah.
I feel like Sam is... Yep, go for it.
Yeah. I'm going to, but Saeed has a really good point here, which is probably turning on focus mode or turn off notifications. However, getting a call from grandma during a live stream would be funny though. Yeah, I think a good amount of those apps default to turning those off for you or like ignoring them. But yes, I would definitely double check that is a thing or set those settings. And Insomnia says, and this is what I was looking around for, if you are someone who wants to stream live from your phone while out walking, bike riding, etc., get yourself a gimbal. It makes a huge difference. Yeah. And here's mine. I'm going to pull cables as I do this. No, I'm good. But yeah, this one's not on right now, so it's a little loosey-goosey. But yeah, you can get a gimbal for not too much. They're a little pricier than just like a tripod, obviously. But yeah, if your specific thing is I want to go and do walking around live streams, then definitely get a gimbal. But again, the point of this stream today is the bare minimum, is just get you going. It's getting you to the point where you feel comfortable doing it, and then you can learn that lesson of, okay, I've done this 20 times and my phone has been jerky every single time. Maybe I should get a gimbal.
Mm-hmm. And again, like I guess I think most people would appreciate a stable surface, or at least reduced motion, because that can actually be a bit of an accessibility issue for some people. If you're moving around in that fashion. But again, like I realize there are a number of people in the chat that are joining us today who aren't complete beginners. They have a fair bit of experience between them. But again, we want to focus on just turning on that camera, talking to the camera, to the microphone, and just being okay and getting comfortable with it. As Sam alluded to earlier in the show, it's a good idea to watch those things back and see how it went. And again, I can't overstate how unnatural it is to hear yourself back if that is something you've never really done. And it'll take some time to get used to. And there's a good chance you'll be really self-critical. And unfortunately, like I think that's another thing you really just need to push through. And I can be a bit of a perfectionist. And I said this to Saeed a few weeks ago, I think. I don't always watch back the recordings, but every time I do, I'm pleasantly surprised that I'm more coherent and less awful than I secretly fear I am. So in some ways, at some point, when you get a bit of experience, it will be really actually reassuring to revisit those recordings.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I still dread watching myself, like, after the fact. It is not something I think I've gotten used to or look forward to doing, and every time I'm like, oh God, why? It's just why?
And like, especially if you're going to take that live stream, and this is probably a little bit more advanced topic, but if you're going to edit that live stream, if you're going to cut it up into clips, if you're personally doing that, you're going to hear yourself. Like, there is no way around it. You're going to see yourself. You're going to hear yourself. That can be confronting at first, but again, I think it's really important just to push through it.
Definitely.
And Saeed's just said a funny thing here. I'm going to read this one out. If you have a fear of going live, starting your first live stream while on a bike might not be the best idea. No. And don't sort of drive and live stream either.
No, don't do that.
Just be careful. Don't take any unnecessary risks. But let's talk about actually working on desktop, and we'll do that in just a moment.
If you've been watching us for a while, or this is your first time and you're thinking, Sam, John, this is great stuff, but I'm wearing a lot of hats already and I don't need to add this to my list of things that I'm doing, but I really want to live stream, I've got you covered. I've been a freelance technical director and stream operator for 20 years, and I can help you either with one-on-one counseling, setups of shows, or even run your whole show for you. Get in touch with me, samproof@gmail.com, or find out more at samproof.tv. See, even just watching that back, I have to take my headphones off. Every week when when there's a promo of me, you see me in the background like...
We might need to work on that in the new year, Sam. But yes, I think there's a lot to be said for just getting used to that. But certainly if you do need assistance with live streaming, with live stream productions, get in touch with Sam. He can help you out with those sorts of things. Yeah. So I guess our final segment for today, we're talking about, overcoming the procrastination, dealing with the fear in the gear, and going live. And not necessarily making it a huge production, but just doing the basics and getting comfortable and doing the thing and showing up consistently. And we're talking about how you might do this in a desktop computer setting. And I guess the first thing I want to say about this is we're kind of blessed to be in a time where there are so many great tools out there. You really can't go too wrong with any of them, but, they will have learning curves. And I guess harking back to the thing I said at the beginning of this show is if you are one of these procrastinators that likes to research, this is a place where you can be trapped. You can research all the tools. You can be like, I'll make a decision in a year's time as to which one I try. And really, we don't want you to do that. We want you to pick one. It doesn't matter which one it is because they all have pretty comparable features. We want you to get comfortable inside of it, and even more importantly, comfortable on camera. I think for today's discussion, we kind of want to push you to one of two services, either Restream Studio or StreamYard. And maybe, Sam, if you can talk in general terms about, the things that these do, and, how they could be beneficial for people that just want to go live and talk about something.
So yeah, these are both relatively similar browser-based softwares. We've talked about a bunch of other stuff that's a lot more complicated in past shows, and we're not even going to mention what they're called at this point to keep it simple. But yeah, Restream and StreamYard, they do a fair amount of stuff, but they are very easy to set up. They give you all of the basics. You go in with Chrome or whatever browser you have. I think Chrome is typically better for both of them. And you can log in as you would any website. And right away, you just have a scene that you're ready to go live in. It brings in your camera and your video. You can, in both instances, bring in a guest or multiple guests, depending on what level of service you pay for. They both do have free options. And for what we're talking about, that's all you need, because we're avoiding multicasting. You're just going to pick one platform and go. It will make an API link to any platform you want, any of the major ones pretty much. And it gives you a chat where you can see all the comments that are coming in from that platform. It gives you what you're seeing behind us live here, like a background graphic. It gives you overlays. It gives you the ability to switch scenes between different things, and these are pre-created scenes, as well as save recordings and send private chat between your guest and yourself, and play videos and show images. So there's really nothing that a beginning streamer could want, past that. I think it covers all of the bases of like everything you could possibly want to do. It's really got that option there. And if you really get to the point where you're like, I really want to do this other thing, that's when you step it up to another piece of software. But these are going to get you just started, and that's all you need.
Absolutely. And I think in some ways, when you're just going live, like, we don't want to think about a show. We don't necessarily want to think in those terms. We want to have your video, your audio, and some ability to communicate with your audience. And again, anything above that is wonderful, but don't try to run before you can walk.
Right.
Just start simply. And I guess the thing, and I'll show a quick video in a second about how you can schedule an event in StreamYard, although it's pretty much an identical process in any of these platforms. But again, if you're not ready to do that, you can record live. You can record inside the software, and you can just watch it back, and you don't need to share that with anybody if you're not ready to do that yet. You can also, and again, it depends a little bit on your destination, so YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. But I know certainly in StreamYard, when I go to schedule this on YouTube, for example, it gives me an option to change the privacy. So I can literally stream to a private video. You can do that. You can watch the video back. If you think it's a great video, at that point, you can make it public and you can tell people about it. But if you're not ready to do that, again, nobody needs to know. We want to sort of, we want to counteract some of the fears that people might have about the process and the software. And, people aren't really, like, I know the internet is a place where some unfortunate social behaviors happen, but generally speaking, nobody's really out to get you. There's probably not a lot to be lost unless you go on a tirade and somebody happens to record that. Like, these are profoundly unlikely things to happen. And don't feel bad about saying and or tripping over your words. Those are perfectly normal. Everybody does that. Don't even stress about it. But let's have a look at we've got a couple of videos here. We'll look at this event invite one first. And again, this is a pretty simple process. I guess what it doesn't demonstrate here is how you set up these social destinations in the first place, but that again is quite simple. And if you do have any questions, let us know. We're happy to dig into this in future shows, but let's just take a watch of this one. To schedule an event in StreamYard, let's click on the Create button. We'll go to Livestream. From here, we can select our destinations. We can add our title and description, which I've copied and pasted from earlier. We can click on schedule for later and specify the date and time. I can upload a thumbnail for my video. We can click on customize for each destination, which will let us adapt these things on the destinations we've chosen. So if we need to adjust the title or the description, we can do that. And then we can hit create live stream. And that essentially is how you can set up an event. And we've spoken previously about why that might be useful. And again, if you're just going live to no one in particular, or if it is a private thing, you don't necessarily even need to schedule. You can go straight to a studio and just sort of record or practice to a private destination. But Sam, is there anything that you want to tell us to set up the video we're about to watch?
Yeah, I mean, this will get you to where that was. This is the A to B. This will get you started with StreamYard.
Okay, awesome.
Log into StreamYard.com and click Create. Then choose Livestream. Select your destinations from the list. Give your live stream a title. Click Customize for each destination. Click Create Broadcast. Enable and check your mic and camera. Click Enter Studio, and you're in. From here, you can put yourself on broadcast, adjust your on-screen banners, upload a custom logo, and I can even screen record right from the studio. Once I'm ready to stream, all I have to do is click Go Live at the top of the screen, and just like that, I've got a studio quality production with an easy-to-use interface that'll help me connect with my audience on multiple platforms.
Okay, I didn't realize your video covered those earlier steps. We probably a bit of repetition there, but I don't think it's a problem for newbies. So again, like Sam did sort of demonstrate in that video some of the other things that you can do, but essentially, let's keep it basic at this point in time. So again, I get the feeling from the people in the chat, some people have just scheduled their first LinkedIn Live, and they're preparing for that. And again, I should say, Saeed, who mentioned that in the chat, he's a professional presenter. Like, he's probably not going to be dealing with those nerves necessarily, but he's sort of bringing the things that he does to a different platform, which is really cool. And I'd love to see more of that from him. But again, if you are starting out, like, just keep it really, really simple. Set your expectations. If you can, incorporate the support of some supportive friends or a co-host, or even just somebody in the chat to let you know how things are going. You've always got the opportunity to record, so you can record things and watch them back and just double check your settings. Again, I think it's a really worthwhile thing to explore. And, before we start to wrap up this week, Sam, I guess if somebody is interested but not quite committed, like, what would you say the potential benefits of live streaming are?
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing anything online, right, you're selling something, you're, getting signups for a newsletter, an e-course, anything like that, then there's just nothing but a benefit to having a live stream go along with it. It's getting more eyeballs out there from somewhere new and different, and giving, it's that, face-to-face contact kind of thing. It's a personal touch, and being able to interact with your community instantaneously. There's nothing else out there like that, right? So I can't find something and be like, you shouldn't live stream. Like, whatever it is your thing is that you're doing, don't do that. There's no thing out there, right? Except maybe brain surgery. Maybe you should be paying attention.
And I think different people, some people are naturally writers, and some people like to talk, and
sure.
you know, whatever that looks like for you, by all means, explore the things that are going to support you. But I was talking to somebody about their Streamlabs desktop setup earlier today, and they were just telling me once they've figured out those technical bugs, there is something that is personally deeply satisfying about being able to communicate with other people, about being able to share your expertise, and about really being able to help people. And whether you're doing that in a professional context, whether you're doing that in service of your business, or even if you're just doing it as a hobby, like those are all wonderful things. And I feel like we've almost got through an entire show without me mentioning AI, but I'm going to mention AI now. In a time when people are producing these things at scale that are often really deeply impersonal, they're not often even by the people that are putting them out in the world. It's not to say that there aren't ways of faking this on video, but I think it's quite apparent that you and I are just showing up and we're talking and we're being real people. And I want to believe in the power of trust and connection more than anything moving into the new year. So as we begin to wrap up, and I just want to note that Saeed said, I'm comfortable with the tech and tools. Camera presence is still a challenge.
Sure.
And again, it's probably a little bit outside of the scope of what we're talking about today. But I've got to tell you, I can't stop talking about how much I love my teleprompter. And if you've been here for a hot second, like Saeed definitely has, you probably would have heard that. But the fact that I know where I'm looking and I can look into my camera and also see Sam in real time is really, really powerful. But again, a lot of these things are just things that you get to practice and have a go. And like, I've certainly seen Saeed in action, and he's a very captivating presence. So I'm really interested. In fact, if you haven't sent me the invite, Saeed, please do, and I'll go check that out. I'm really looking forward to that. Although that said, depending on time zones, I might need to watch the recording later on. But anyway, as we start to wrap up today, Sam, where can people find out more about you and what's your content and do all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find me over at samproof.tv. All my social links are in the top left under my name there, and you'll find me randomly streaming because I don't take my own advice and pinpoint a specific schedule anymore. If you didn't get enough cats this week, you can go over to cuteavalanche.com and find out more about us and our 24/7 cat cam. And yeah, happy holidays, everybody. Next week, we're going to be talking about overlays, just like the snow that's coming down and this QR code that's over here and all of these things and other kinds of design elements of your stream. So hit that notification thing for next week. And how about you, John? Where can you be found?
You can find out all my stuff over at johnlacey.com. There are articles about live streaming and different things, and there are a whole bunch of social links at the bottom of that page. But as Sam alluded to, we definitely are talking about producing live stream assets on next week's show. I mentioned this on the show, but I also posted about this on LinkedIn during the week that I use Microsoft PowerPoint as a graphics tool, which I think hurts most people's brains. But I'm really keen to sort of explore that a little bit next week and talk about the thumbnails and the backgrounds and the overlays and the different things that we can produce to add a little bit of flair to our visual presentation. And I know Saeed is sort of a legend when it comes to that, so hopefully he'll have some recommendations too. So again, we are coming up on Christmas and the end of the year. Whatever it looks like in your neck of the woods, please celebrate, please take some time out for yourself, and look after yourself at this time of year too. And we will be back next week. We're not taking any kind of break from this show, so if you are around, please join us and we'll talk to you again soon.
Happy holidays, everyone.